What's going on, everyone? Dr. Todd from Move Now University, and I'm sitting here with David. David's our exercise therapist at the clinic.
Hey.
And David has a really cool background that I think is pertinent for this topic over here, because what I want to talk about is something that I was reminded of this morning when I was seeing patients, because I had a patient come in this morning that was just starting care with us, who was kind of thrilled after she watched our day 3 video on talking about segment posture movement, and she resonated with a certain thing that I say in one of the videos when I talk about movement, is that it's not just a boring repetition of the same exercises every time you come in, but it's actually a progression. And then we talked about the belt system of functional movement, and she really resonated with the fact that we have all of these metrics in place to make it fun, engaging, and it's not just repetitious. And so I figured that'd be a cool topic to talk about for all of our chiropractors out there that either already do some kind of rehab in office, want to improve it, or don't do any at all, and think, well, how is this different than going to like a physical therapist? Is this just competition in the world of physical therapy? Now, before we get into this, I'll give this disclaimer right here. So David worked with some great physical therapists that he has a ton of respect for, and he learned working with different therapists that were more progressive, that was not the norm in physical therapy. He shadowed in multiple clinics, and he saw a lot of the same stuff that I've seen and heard about from different physical therapy friends that I have that talk about their own profession, of it being mostly just lots of manual therapy and very simplistic 1980s isolated exercises that bore someone to the point where they never want to come back ever again. Before we get into that too, if you want to see all the behind the scenes stuff, or you want to see this all working together in action, check out the demo.movenowU.com. Shows how this all goes together. David, though, is our main exercise therapist here. He's a physical therapy assistant, worked in physical therapy clinics for, 3 years?
Since 2016.
Since
I
2016.
started shadowing in 2016. So
Gotcha. Yeah. And so he's also a personal trainer. He's smarter than the average bear. He came in and we lucked out because he interviewed for the job here right before we were teaching an impact seminar, which is a bunch of chiropractors fly out to the clinic. We teach them all the systems. And I said, hey, David, if you want, why don't you hang out for a couple hours? And so he hung out for 12 hours or something, right?
long time.
Right. And so he hung out, and obviously I saw that he had the interest and the drive and the passion for this, which is great. And so he's been working with us ever since. How long do you think it took you to get the systems down here?
Week or two. 2 weeks maybe.
Yeah, which is kind of unheard of. You don't usually have someone jump in and just get it all down in 2 weeks. But then even further than that, he's helped us develop some further systems that we're going to be releasing soon, which is a lot of differential diagnosis stuff with orthopedic testing and stuff. So he's helped tremendously with that. So huge asset for the team. But I wanted to open up this discussion of just talking about what are the things that are in a typical standard physical therapy clinic, what are good attributes in just functional rehab across the board, and what are things you want to avoid. And so being that I've talked this whole time, I'll turn it over. I'll let David talk a little bit. So what do you think are the commonalities that maybe burn a patient out when they do some kind of functional rehab? They come into a clinic with an injury, they have pain, and they want to get better. And then what do you think it is that makes them not stick with it or have a bad taste in their mouth?
Combination of things. I think being stuck, and then when you're stuck, being stagnant and not being told why you're stuck, or not being reassured that we're problem solving, we're working on things. So a lack of communication and a lack of creativity. So they don't. So once they're stuck and they feel hopeless already when they showed up, then they continue to feel hopeless because the problems are never actually addressed, I guess.
Okay, and so mechanically in that process, so some of the things that David's talking about is patient comes in with, let's say they come in with low back pain, right? And whether this is in a chiropractic setting doing functional movement, whether it's in a physical therapy setting, the patient goes in for just pain as their primary concern, not really wellness and correction, just hey, I was referred over by my orthopedic doctor and he said, help me get me out of my low back pain, because if not, I have to have surgery. That's the common picture of why people end up a lot of times in a PT clinic. They're referred by medical doctors who in a lot of states, depending on what state they're in, the medical doctor puts the diagnosis down of what's going on.
They also dictate the care too.
They dictate the care. So they say, hey, I'm sending Mary in, and you need to work on her lower back for twice a week for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then as the therapist, you're like, okay, great. Even if I did have more knowledge to look outside of that and look at full body movement patterns and want to rebuild strength and all that sort of thing, I'm limited at what I can do. Right?
Yeah, and even sometimes it goes one step further. They're like 2 times a week, and you're doing these exercises.
Oh, and they even dictate what exercises to do.
Yeah, and that's when it gets uglier, I think, is because a lot of them will never train on any of this stuff. I was talking to the lady who coached me up in personal training, and her husband's a PA, and he's like, I don't know any of this stuff. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, like I feel like that's a little insulting of someone who doesn't have the background or the passion of it to be telling an exercise professional, a physical therapist who went to school for this, someone who has a passion for it, of what exercises to do. That's ridiculous.
Definitely. Yeah.
I wonder how commonplace that is across the country. If that's like the majority, if that's 50-50. I don't know. I've heard enough of these stories though of at least the doctors dictate the diagnosis, the region of the care at least.
Yeah, which is tough. Yeah.
Okay. So I was asking David before we started this conversation, I said, what are things that you think are the biggest difference about how we program and do stuff here with patients compared to even what you were doing in like a good, positive working environment? What'd you say?
Of the ability to treat full body from the get-go. So we do the fundamentals of functional movement, which I think is a great start, always. And then we also, our movement assessment is intuitive, and we notice where the issues are, and then we can target each of those issues up the kinetic chain, so the whole kinetic chain is being addressed, as opposed to, I'm going to work on your shoulder, but I can't really touch your thoracic or your scapula or your neck because those aren't directly correlated to the diagnosis that he gave me.
Right. Totally. Or like someone comes in and they have a shoulder issue, but we're looking at an overhead deep squat.
Yeah.
And then we're saying, oh, you lack ankle dorsiflexion. Let's start fixing ankle dorsiflexion. The person's like, wow, I'm able to take a longer stride. And now that's helped with all this lower body issue that wasn't even my original complaint. Because people just get so used to their problems that they think that's normal, and they don't know what it really feels like to feel great. They just feel they're normal, which reminds me of like a fun little saying or a little concept that I remember a chiropractor who I worked with for several years in New Mexico told me this. He said, you can never feel better than normal. Meaning, when a patient comes in and they say, I feel great, it's like, you're normal. That's it. That's it. You've just been abnormal for so long that now you're up to like normal, and you've been operating at a substandard level for so long that you've had this altered reference point. Right? That's kind of it's kind of an interesting concept, right?
Yeah.
So another big difference of at least how we map this stuff out and put it together in our clinic and how we teach it to other chiropractors inside of Move Now University is, how do you keep a patient engaged? How do you keep them excited about this? Because there's a patient we just started a couple days ago. You probably know who I'm talking about. She was very hesitant to do any sort of exercise or anything in front of other people because she's like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel weird, and I'm uncomfortable, and all this sort of thing, which happens sometimes. Yeah. And I'm guessing after we took her through the systems, she probably felt better about it.
Yeah, she's calming down.
Yeah, she's calming down, and
She's enjoying it too. It seems like
and
build rapport and makes it easier. Yeah.
And like part of the reason that is too is because like on the wall behind us, I'll flip this around so you can see it, but on the wall behind us, we have these belts, these martial arts belts, and lots of names up there. You have white belt, yellow belt, blue belt, green, orange, black. All right, and the reason that we do that is because you see that David's wearing his orange belt right now. He's going to be black belt pretty soon. Okay, I got my black belt on. The reason we do that is because people like the fact that they can compete and they can start at a certain level and they can see progress. They can see progression. That's one of, I think, the basic fundamental human needs is progression or community acknowledgement, just showing progress, right? Versus if someone's just coming in every day and doing the same thing and they don't really see where it's going. So that's one aspect of why I think this is so well received. But then another thing too is using kettlebells.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when kettlebells, I'll say something else first because I'm thinking about it.
Sure. Yeah.
Our movement assessment also is a great tool to tell people how much better they're getting. Sometimes people get stuck in the lower belt levels because
There's multiple dysfunctions.
multiple dysfunctions. Like if you have 6 dysfunctions, then it's going to be tough to get to blue belt sometimes. And if you get injured in the process or something, or you have some kind of setback, then that really slows progress down. But we can communicate their progress by saying, wow, your neck range of motion improved by 20 degrees since like 3 weeks ago. That's pretty awesome. Like, do you realize? And they're like, yeah, I can actually look over my shoulder when I drive now. And it's like little things like that, little victories, making sure you're communicating those.
Yep, for sure. And then going back to what I was just touched on a second ago, that was for as kettlebells.
Yeah.
What's your opinion and your take on how we incorporate kettlebells into the benchmark of belt progression and just how we introduce that to all different patient bases, from our 15-year-old patients to our 80-year-old patients?
I think for the elderly patients, it's exciting to get back into things that they didn't think they would be doing again. So it kind of brings excitement in the air whenever you pull out a kettlebell and we're like, we're doing kettlebells today. And they're like, whoa, okay. And for younger kids and athletes, they're like, oh, well, not just like doing these lame physical therapy, boring exercises. And then the adults, it's primarily a competition. Like they enjoy the competitive nature of the belts.
And I'm looking up on the wall. We have a lot of green belts and orange belts, and those are the people that are sticking with trying to improve and get further and further through the process. So like maybe they came in with pain, and then this lit a fire inside of them and inspired something that maybe they didn't even know existed. And then it transitions them hopefully into getting more into a lifestyle of strength and power and training and actual exercise. Like building strength is the goal. And that's actually how I communicate this with every single new patient at the very beginning. Is I say, look, all these problems you're talking about that you have here, we have different ways that we address this, but the commonality or I will say like the secret to fixing this is building strength. That's ultimately what it is. But that person is the person who said, well, I went to the gym and I got injured and it hurt me. That's because either you have some kind of abnormal posture, some segmental issue, your movement patterns are dysfunctional, you have tissues that are too tense, you have motor control issues of your brain putting brakes on certain areas as a protective mechanism, you might have joint immobility because of either alignment, or you need to go through protocols to, re-lubricate the joints and get them moving. So there's so many variables that it's tough to just address this of a patient that has pain, or like someone in the public having pain, walking into a gym and expecting the average gym, the average big box gym, or like walk into like a CrossFit class or something and just throw someone into like overhead deep squats right from the beginning. And like, again, I'm not saying that that's how all gyms work or all CrossFit classes work or any of that, but I'm saying like, if we had to look at what the majority out there is, we hear enough of these stories that we know that there's not really great systems across the board in the movement industry. And that's why I feel a strong obligation as a chiropractor of knowing spinal mechanics and understanding posture like we do, and being skilled at finding segmental issues in the spine and extremities. Like, I feel like this is the thing that we should own as far as measuring and fixing movement. Like, I personally don't think that, in my opinion, I'm biased of course, but I feel like as chiropractors, we are the ones that have the best positioning to be able to handle all these things for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
One of them even being the fact that we're not dictated what we can and cannot do. Yeah. I mean, in all the states, to my knowledge, we have the ability to, like, I know that we do have the ability to diagnose all of this stuff, obviously, but we can diagnose and we can put together the treatment plan and do it. And we can create enough value in it that even if the insurance company isn't going to cover it, patients are willing to pay for it out of pocket because they see the immense value in it. And like a lot of times, if you just had to imagine in a standard physical therapy clinic, if it's not covered by insurance and a patient's having to pay out of pocket for it, how well received do you think that is by the average patient out there going through rehab?
I mean, a copay is hard to get them to move forward with sometimes. In the not as progressive clinics, it's like they're like, oh, I have a copay, I got to pay out of pocket for this, and they're like, I don't know, and then they leave. Like
And that is ultimately a value issue. It's a value issue. It's not the price of the copay. Even if it was $100 a visit, if it was so valuable that person saw that this was going to transform their life for the better forever, they'd pay $500 a visit. They'd find a way to pay for it. Now, fortunately, we don't have to charge $500 a visit. We can make it affordable for our patients. But so anyway, cool. Well, I think that's a good discussion. A good topic, getting you to weigh in on it, being someone who's been in the physical therapy world and now in the chiropractic world. And not that we're pinning one against the other. I have some great colleagues who I work with who are very skilled physical therapists. I study and learn from a lot of different physical therapists that have put together research and different trainings. But it's as a whole of what we're allowed to do as a profession, how we deliver this to a patient, and then at the end of the day, what kind of results we're able to render. I mean, that's what I'm discussing here, really. And that I think that more and more chiropractors, if they want better outcomes with their patients, they need to be measuring and fixing movement. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
There you go.
I agree.
Okay, cool. All right. Anyway, so Dr. Todd and David over here at Gonstead Spine and Wellness on behalf of Move Now University. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Share this with someone that you think would be beneficial to hear the message. And check out the demo.movenowyou.com. If you're interested to see if you want to put functional movement into your chiropractic practice, you can set up a call with one of our support staff. We can take you through the process. And we have some really cool onboarding methods of how to do this. And we'll teach you how to find a rock star like David in your clinic too. All right? And then final thing is February, we're doing our impact event February 21, 22. We have an impact event out here in Meridian, Idaho. I will leave in the comment section below the URL to jump on that, but it is impact.movenowyou.com. I'll leave that below, and you can find out more about the upcoming event. David will be here, right?
Yep.
He'll be here. Okay, cool. All right, over and out.